All right, UFC 300 is right around the corner. It goes down April 13th. And the big question is, who's it going to be? Who is going to headline what is supposed to be the biggest card of the year, the centennial events? They're always massive. I know for a fact. I was on UFC 100. Don't remember much of it, though. Lost about 3 months of my life because, as you know, I went to sleep for quite some time. But UFC 100, they had Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir, George St. Pierre versus Thiago Alves, me versus Dan Henderson, Jovic, Paulo Thiago, Yoshihiro Akiyama taking on Alan Belcher as well. So top to bottom, that was a stacked card. UFC 200, we had Cain Velasquez versus Travis Brown. We had Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Daniel Cormier, Anderson Silva. Supposed to be John Jones, but the last minute Jones did what John Jones does, tested positive once again, and Anderson Silva stepped in on a day's notice. And then we had Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt. And the main event was Amanda Nunes, the Lioness, taking on Miesha Tate. So the question remains, who is going to be the headliner of UFC 300? Because so far, we have a great fight card. That's a fact. We just had an announcement yesterday. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan for the #1 contender spot.
#1 ranked lightweight Charles Oliveira is taking on #4 ranked Arman Tsarukyan in a #1 contender fight.
Sensational fight. Absolutely phenomenal. Two of the best lightweights on the planet. Okay. Both very exciting fighters. Oliveira finished Beneil Dariush. Arman Tsarukyan finished Beneil Dariush. Poor old Dariush. What a guy he is, by the way. But so you got Charles Oliveira versus Tsarukyan. You've got Jiri Prochazka, the former champion, taking on Aleksandar Rakic. Sensational fight. Two big guys, two Europeans, two guys that like to throw down. And of course, Jiri Prochazka wants to get back to winning ways. Calvin Kattar versus former champion, again, Aljamain Sterling, in what is guaranteed to be a fantastic matchup. And the former champ, Aljamain's featherweight debut, moving up in weight. And then, of course, a middleweight clash between Bo Nickal and Cody Brundage. Bo Nickal becoming a big star in his own right, the absolute wrestling phenom. Now, that's a sick fight card. And in fact, any one of those fights could be a main event, right? For a fight night or even a pay-per-view. Arman Tsarukyan, Oliveira, Prochazka, Rakic, Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling, Bo Nickal, right? Sign me up, take my money. But there's one fight missing. I mean, there's a lot of fights missing. There's only 4 fights announced there, but there's the big blockbuster, the rabbit being pulled out of the hat, the big, hey, take a look at this, UFC 300. Who is it going to be? Well, UFC 100, the main event was Brock Lesnar taking on Frank Mir. UFC 200, we also had Brock Lesnar taking on Mark Hunt. And UFC 300, will we see Brock Lesnar on there again? It sounds stupid because Brock Lesnar is no spring chicken, right? He's 46 years old. 46 years old. But remember Randy Couture? He fought onto a ripe old age to about 47, I think. And fighters have gone longer. And guess what? When there's millions of dollars on the line, people will come and fight. And people would love to see Brock Lesnar stepping in there once again, right? Now, of course, there is the talk of Leon Edwards taking on Bilal. Remember the name Muhammad. That fight needs to happen. Dana said it's going to happen. Leon wants to fight on UFC 300. And that would be a worthy headliner. It really would, right? It's an incredible title fight. That would main event a pay-per-view. But is it the kind of mega matchup, right? I'm not talking about them as fighters. I'm not talking about them being not worthy to main event. Of course they are. It's a UFC title fight. It's an incredible fight. Leon Edwards is a phenomenal champion. And outside of Shavkat Rakhmonov, no offense to Bilal, I don't see anybody really posing any kind of threat anytime soon. But is it this mainstream crossover fight that's going to have the fans going crazy? I don't know if it is. Because UFC 299, right before it, of course, I mean, that fight card is ridiculous from top to bottom. One of the best fight cards this year. You want to think, or you would think that maybe UFC 300 is going to outdo that, right? The UFC isn't in competition with itself, but if you look at 299, O'Malley versus Vera, Marlon Vera, Chito Vera, Dustin Poirier, Benoit Saint-Denis, Gilbert Burns, Jack Della Maddalena, Kevin Holland, Michael Page, Curtis Blades, Jalton Almeida, Mateusz Gamrot, Rafael Dos Santos, Piotr Yang, Song Yudong, the list goes on, right? It's a crazy fight card. It's an insane fight card. And UFC 300, so far with the fights that are announced, as I said, a really, really strong fight card. And now UFC 200 was headlined by Miesha Tate taking on Amanda Nunes, right? So UFC 300, Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad, that would be phenomenal. Okay, that would be great. But the UFC, I think, are going to deliver something special, right? They are the best in the world when it comes to this, when it comes to matchmaking, when it comes to blowing people's minds, putting on these sensational matchups. There really is no one better than Dana White and the company, right? I'm telling you, that is why the UFC is the most valuable sports franchise on the planet. That's a fact. Many, many millions, billions, what am I saying? Many billions of dollars sold for 4-point-something billion in 2016. God only knows what it's worth now, but it's a tremendous amount of money. So they're going to do something special, one would imagine. So I've been sitting around thinking, right, who could it be? Right, Israel Adesanya, he's going to come back, but he's not going to fight for the belt. Maybe he fights on UFC 300. Maybe that's Khamzat Chimaev versus Israel Adesanya. That'd be a solid addition. But who would really push the needle in a massive way? Well, I said Brock Lesnar. He's only 46. He's still a draw. People love him. The UFC and the WWE, they're both owned by the same parent company now. So I would imagine that the politics and the contractual stuff, that would be pretty easy waters to navigate. So I can't see that being a hurdle. But who would the opponent be, right? Brock Lesnar's a heavyweight. Who's he going to fight? Well, call me crazy. Call me Tom Aspinall's #1 fanboy. But could you imagine Brock Lesnar versus Tom Aspinall headlining UFC 300? Leon Edwards versus Bilal as the co-main, right? And the rest of the fights that I said, Oliveira, Tsarukyan, Prochazka, Rakic, Bo Nickal, Cody Brundage, and Kelvin Kattar and Aljamain Sterling, right? Now we're talking. Now we're getting wild, right? And I know you're thinking, Bisping, you're talking out of your mind, and I probably am. And maybe this is just a fan in me. Maybe it's just wishful thinking, okay? But Tom Aspinall, Brock Lesnar, that would just be mental, right? And that is the type of thing I think the UFC are going to do, right? I don't know about Brock Lesnar. Maybe he is too old, right? Maybe he's not, right? I don't follow pro wrestling. How does he look lately? He's a big, massive, strong individual that loves to fight. He's a mean son of a bitch. And when it comes to mixed martial arts, the man has been a natural. He's only had 8 fights, but he's been the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. 5 wins, 3 losses, right? Made his UFC debut in his second fight against Frank Mir. Then he beat Heath Herring. Knocks out Randy Couture to become the heavyweight champion of the world. Defends the belt against Frank Mir. Defends it again against Shane Carwin. And then gets absolutely mollywopped from Cain Velasquez. Remember that when the UFC signed with the Big Fox? I mean, that was unbelievable. Then he fights Alistair Overeem. Loses that fight as well. Defeats Mark Hunt. That was overturned to a no contest. And then he hasn't fought since 2016. Right, and he might be too old and he might be happy, but as I said, he's a mean son of a bitch. There was a rumor a long time ago that he was going to fight Daniel Cormier.
Whoa. DC, I'm coming for you, motherfucker!
I was excited for that. We know DC was. DC loves the guy. He loves professional wrestling, and he would have loved to have shared the octagon. But sadly, DC's time now has passed, okay? He's with me in the commentary booth, and he's absolutely killing it.
You're always late. Bro, you didn't even, like yesterday, you didn't even come to work.
My flight got cancelled, you prick. DC doesn't need to fight. He's not going to fight. He's been retired for years. But Tom Aspinall isn't. And Tom Aspinall is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And that might be the kind of challenge that really floats the boat, that really tickles the fancy of a Brock Lesnar. As I say, I might be talking out of my absolute backside. This could be absolute fucking nonsense, okay? Right? John Jones, Stipe Miocic, they're not fighting anytime soon, okay? Tom's probably going to defend the interim belt. He might do it before then. But if he does it on International Fight Week and he does it against Brock Lesnar, oh my God, what a spectacle that would be. What do you think? Am I out of my mind? Am I talking shit? Am I away with the ferris? Have I been hit in the head too many times? Yes, to all of those things, right? But you never know. Stranger things, crazier things have happened. Could Brock Lesnar come back? UFC 100, 200, 300, fighting Tom Aspinall for the interim heavyweight championship of the world. It sounds mental. It sounds bizarre. But guess what? It might just happen. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Or am I just getting crazy? I'm having a bit of fun here, but I'm thinking, who could it be? Who's it going to be? Who's going to headline UFC 300? It's going to be something special. So anyway, there's my thoughts. There's my ramblings for today. Let me know what you think of that in the comment section. And thank you for watching.